So, hello. Thank you, Mihara, and I'm going to talk about more in detail about the Crest and also the strategic basic research program in general. And I will use maybe half an hour, but you can interrupt me anytime. And the thing is, maybe you have to ask questions in a loud voice because we have only a limited number of microphones. So just raise your hand and interrupt me at any time. All right. So right now, Sano-san has covered the JST's core activities. So I just directly go into detail about the strategic basic research program. And what's one? Right. So first, I want to ask you, how many of you are researchers? All right. So, and how many are attachés or those liaison people? And others are maybe from JST. I'm not sure. All right. And briefly, I will introduce myself. I was a researcher, and I did a postdoc, and after that, I came into the JST, but in a different department, which is regarding the science communication. And from 2012, I moved to the current department, Department of Innovation Research, which is responsible for Crest and Presto and other several strategic basic research programs. And I'm in the third year, so I will cover, as best as possible, but if you're not familiar with something and if I'm not able to answer you, then I will get back to you after consulting others, our eligible colleagues. And before going on, I just want to make sure that you're familiar with the Japanese system, but if you're not, then this is a kind of key point, to understand my slides better. The thing is, I'm going to use the Japanese yen as standard currency, and if you're not familiar with that, you can do your math, simple math, which is like, for example, if I use the 1 oku yen as a unit, then it's going to be $1 million, 1.7 euros, like that. And also I will talk about something about the fiscal year. And the Japanese fiscal year starts in April through March. So now we are in the beginning of 2014. So this is kind of common sense in the room. All right? So here's the start of my presentation, and this is the strategic basic research program objectives, which is disclosed on the website, to contribute to the creation of future innovation. So innovation is a key term, by forming knowledge bases to solve existing plausive near future problems in the context of science and technology. And to promote objective-oriented basic research. This is also a key term, objective-oriented. It's not a free will. It's not the curiosity-driven, but objective-oriented. Of internationally recognized competitiveness by producing scientific and technological excellence. So these are objectives we insist, every time. And how many programs are there in the strategic basic research programs? We have many. And unfortunately, we don't have enough time to cover everything, and we are focusing on the two programs, Crest and Presto. And here's a list of others like Rato and ACT-C, and Axel is a new program which began last year. And just briefly, Asano-san has covered this portfolio or the R&D pipeline in JST. So we are in the kind of basic side, but we also welcome the output into the innovation. So we try to bridge the gap between the basic and applied and innovation research by introducing this new program. And we do also have a kind of specified, like a low carbon technology focused program. And also we do have something in between society and the scientific community. These are the program components of ours. And a little about the budget. And our strategic basic research programs are divided into several, and this one created the seeds for new technology as a major part of the budget. And in figure, it's 53 billion yen in 2013, which is kind of a good match with the Kakenhi programs. The Kakenhi last year, I just looked into the website, and they said like 230 to 240 billion, so maybe 1/4, a quarter of them. So this is a kind of budget allocation in the Japanese science and technology landscape. So this amount is going to be driven really basic research, whereas we do have a kind of this fair amount to invest for the innovation-oriented research. And some approaches, and the most important one is we set research areas of high priority and assign research supervisors to research areas. So we specify the problems which actually came from society. And we set several research areas per year, and we call for proposals that match with these research areas. And we do promote research in virtual institute system, which I covered in the later slides. But these two are really kind of unique points of the strategy-based research program. And what we want to do is to find out innovative scientists, of course, and support them intensively, to foster world-class scientists collectively in the priority areas. Priority areas, we now have 5 key areas: green innovation, life innovation, nanotechnology materials, ICT, and science technology for society and social infrastructure. Those are 5 priority areas we set for right now. And how we implement the policy. So this is a whole structure from the society to the representatives and the implementing agency. So we are an implementing agency. So the green part is, say, JST. And we do top-down thing. And the policy, of course, comes from the top. And the policy is basically represented the will of the society, right? And the policy comes to the implementation agency. We interpret the policy into actual the practices. And how we do is to have this kind of layer or hierarchical structure, which is called a PD, PO, PI relationship. The PD is the term for program director, who actually handles the kind of bigger things. For example, this PD or a number of people decides what kind of research areas we need for, say, this year. Then we decide, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4 research areas for this year, and we assign the program officer, which I mentioned in the previous slide, program officer, and in Crest program, we call them research supervisors. And those research supervisors are responsible for selecting the appropriate projects for their own research areas. And the individual research projects are led by principal investigators. In Crest, they are called the research director, and in Presto, they are called simply Presto researcher. And all in all, the research area is the set of research projects, and the set of research areas conforms the overall, strategic basic research programs priority areas. And how they, specifically a program officer manages his or her own research area, this is called a virtual institute. And the PO is something like the director of the virtual institution. The institution is based on the research groups like this. So one group may be led by one person, followed by the 2 large groups. Whereas we might have kind of smaller groups, we might have larger groups. So it doesn't have any restrictions of having how big the groups are. But all these teams are supervised by him or her, and all in all, the outputs are contributing to the society by creating the innovation or seeds of the innovation. And the virtual means this sort of ideas. So we may have the best team for certain, say, like in the field of medicine, okay, we might have the best team in Hokkaido. And in a different field of study, say imaging, we might have the people in Kyushu. If that's the case, we want to have both people. But if that's a kind of real institution, we cannot do that because they have to move. But in this case, we can have a virtual teams by selecting projects from here and here, or even sometimes here. Like China is famous for like genomics, for example. We might be able to select projects from here Of course, no restrictions apply because we are standing on the taxpayers' money, so we have to clear some of the restrictions, but we can do that. And all the projects are led by principal investigators. And here are JST staff. So we are supporting program officers to manage, the research areas, and we are supporting researchers through this system. The benefits? It's obvious that it's very flexible. We can start really kind of swiftly, very speedy. If there are critical problems arise, then we can set next year we can have a new research area. And also we can reorganize the members, or we can reorganize groups in a project, or the projects itself. One of the research areas are not really famous, but very unique, that after 2 years or 3 years, we shuffle all the teams in the research area to make a new team so that everything is going towards the one goal. So it's a really flexible system. And also, it's unique in the diversity, and I just named it intentional diversity, because the teams are consisting of all stars, and they are also interdisciplinary, because we have the goal, but we don't have any limit on how we can approach for the goal. So we can have any kind of teams, but at the same time we have the same picture as an objective. So just kind of metaphor of the knights of the round table. We have the King Arthur, and we do have really kind of strong soldiers around them. And the networking opportunities, it's obvious, and you can just see into believing. So this is a picture, pictures from one of the closed meeting, and you see here there are two central senior people. They are supervisors, and on the front row there are advisors, and on the behind there are team members and also postdoc researchers, and they do this kind of question and the discussion. Here is the postdoc researcher answering questions from the supervisor, and the questions are really harsh, and sometimes they cannot answer. In that case, it's really kind of tough mentoring. And we do have poster session afterwards, so it's a kind of mix, or the mixer of all the people from different fields of study. So it's very attractive to the people trying to apply for our programs. And top down and bottom up, it's obvious, and also Salsa has covered. So the JST part is almost top down, whereas the JSPS is bottom up. And objectives first. This is the kind of important. Objectives first, then plan projects. So we do have a kind of strategy. And the program portfolio, we show from basics to apply to the innovation research. So it's a combination. We have the intention of nurturing research from the basic applied to actual contribution to the society. And on the other hand, bottom up is very important. I know the importance, but it comes from the project. And if something really big has come, then we have to think about how to do that. So it's a different approach, two completely different but complementary approaches. And I just go into a little bit more detail or nail down, and I just show this PDP-OPI relationship, and I cannot skip the fact that we do have this part too. This part is now we do have a Center for Research and Development Strategy, CRDS. And CRDS is so-called in-house think tank. And they suggest to, for example, improve the ongoing research areas, and also the research areas about to come. We do the intense research on what kind of research areas we need, but they do have the ability to provide information so that we can improve the outcome of the research. And they also contribute into JST, but also to the MEX directly as well. They have a workshop, for example, together with the really top scientists. And in that case, the strategy is not only for the JST, but also the kind of bigger or higher bodies in the science and technology policy. So they do have the publications, and the MEX will hopefully read them, and they basically use the knowledge to improve the national strategy as a whole. And if you are a life scientist or familiar with the life science, this might be of interest, but unfortunately I didn't have time to fully translate into English. But What I want to say is that from policy to the implementation, there are several steps. And of course, this life innovations is very big. It's like cabinet level. And the strategic objectives are the stem for our research areas. So in between, there is an involvement of the research communities. So I mentioned about workshops held by CRDS, and we do also have a kind of individual surveys, like I myself do interviews with the researchers before setting up a new research area. So it's a kind of an activity there. There is an activity. And after that, these strategic objectives are published. And then we try to decide, okay, what kind of research areas are needed. If that's best for Crest, then we do have Crest areas. And if that's appropriate for Presto or both. So depending on the strategic objectives, we decide the best ways. And after that, the projects are coming. And the acronyms, the Presto and Crest. It has the same E, but it has a different meaning. So Presto, PR stands for the precursory research, and E comes from embryonic. It's not a stem cell, but rather kind of more conceptual, embryonic, or still it's in infancy. And to cultivate the sprouts for future innovation by individual scientists. And the Crest means the core research and evolutionary, which is a little bit more advanced to create innovations with big impact. Compared to these two terms. By collaborative teams, not individuals, but teams under research director. So these are Presto and Crest descriptions. And this is a kind of schematics. Presto for individuals to cultivate the sprouts of future innovation, and this is a kind of way of governance. Under the strategic objective, the research areas is set. And this research area is governed by the research supervisor and supported by research area advisors who are going to review the proposals and also evaluate the ongoing projects. And they call for proposals, and the researchers apply for the call, and successful people are selected as Presto researchers. And the budget, it's about from 30 to 40 million for generally 3 years. In case of Crest, it's a little more big, like 150 to 500 million for up to 5 years. And the biggest difference is here, the team, rather than individuals. So it's the same, under the strategic objectives and research area and the supervisors and advisors. This is the same. The only difference is here, the players are the teams. And the timelines, it's a little bit complicated, so I would just like to explain how it works. And from year one, at the beginning of the research year, we do the first call, and the first projects are selected in year one, and the evaluation is called ex-ante evaluation. And this first team or first researcher do the study until the end, year 6, for 5 years, or in the case of Presto, 3 years. In the year 2, we do have another, or the second call, and this project starts from here until year 7. So it's kind of interesting, because individual projects last for 5 years, but the research area as a whole stands like 80 years in Crest, and in the Presto it's 6 years. So this is the system, and we do have the interim and ex-post evaluation case of Crest, whereas this is fairly short, so only ex-post evaluation is done in case of Presto. And we do have the network. So the research area itself is a kind of autonomy. Have a director here, and we do have the team members. But if you have, like, for example, the shared strategic objective, these two areas will act really closely, and we might have a kind of combined close meeting, for example. Just I showed the picture, which was a kind of example of this kind. We did have, in that example, we did have the objective about the homeostasis or medicine. And we did have a Crest and Presto homeostasis research area. So in that case, two research supervisors talk to each other, and they co-organize their internal meetings. So that's the way we do to make an intertwined network between those researchers. And also we do intense management or intense mentoring of the members. So this is the kind of schematics of how our programs work. And this is the kind of ad, or maybe to just mention. We have a network between Crest and Presto, but also with the outside members, or even the funding agencies outside of Japan. So this was held this year in January in the field of energy management systems. So we collaborated with the NSF in the US and the DFK in Germany, and co-organized the symposium in Hawaii. So this kind of work is a kind of what we want to do really kind of more. So this one was a particular example, but we want to have like maybe 2, 3, or even more in the coming future. And yeah, I can skip it because I don't have to mention, because this is kind of really what we want. So wrapping up about the program, so strategic basic research programs promote innovation-oriented basic research. This is really kind of take-home message. And a virtual network-based research institution is directed by the program officer. And in addition to the selection, ex-post management evaluation, it's very important, very essential part of the virtual institute. So this is the end of the strategic basic research programs, and from here maybe I can use the 10 minutes for the actual application in 2014. But before that, if you have any questions, I can take any time. If nothing, I can just go through and go into the general Q&A session. Is that okay?